بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نستكمل الندوة.
Welcome to our national agenda to UAE. Looks forward to that the students of UAE are among the best in the world in the assessments of reading, math and science. This could not be solved only by the policies, but also by the curriculum development as well as teacher development. Teacher development would not be the magical wand that would reflect these scores, but the school and the teacher have a big role in enhancing and developing this score test. And this leads us to the second paper, which is the effect of these papers or of these scores on the level of scoring for the school level in comparison to the strategic goals or national strategic goals, and also how to enhance these assessment tests and to focus on the learning in school. This will be presented by Shaika Lulwa and Khalifa, the academic consultant in the National Assessment Department in Kingdom of Bahrain. Shaika Lulwa Al Khalifa has obtained her master's in education in Bahrain, and also a diploma in scientific education in Bahrain. She also filled many prestigious positions in the Ministry of Education in the of the Kingdom of Bahrain, as well as many other executive academic and executive positions within the ministry. She has many published and unpublished participations. She has a unpublished master's thesis in the education of girls in relation with the UNESCO in Beirut, and also she has other educational studies that would help the field. She also participated in many local, regional, and international conferences, as well as educational committees. Please join me in welcoming Shaika Lulwa Al Khalifa.
Peace be upon all of you. At the beginning, I'd like to extend thanks to Regional Center for Educational Planning, particularly Mrs. Mahra Al-Mutawi. I thank you for inviting the National Authority for Qualifications and Quality Assurance of Education and Training to participate and present their experience in this field. My presentation, fortunately, Dr. Taysir presented a good presentation on the policies and their influence of the assessment results. We speak about the national assessment and their role in the education quality. The presentation when we speak about the national authority, I'd like to define the authority. Then we speak about the national assessments and the Department of Examinations and giving assistance to the school. The mission of the national authority, the vision is increasing the sustainable quality to promote both education and training in Bahrain Kingdom. It is concerned with education and training. It has a role. The mission is establishing the criteria and guiding forums to measure the quality of the performance of education and training institutions, also reviewing the quality of the performance of the educational institutions, building and implementing the national assessment system, management of the national framework of qualifications, and publishing the reports on the reviews and qualifications and national assessments, and builds the national capabilities in order to improve the quality and sustainability of the educational systems. Another important is promoting partnership and mechanisms of communication with the concerned departments. The authority works in cooperation with the Ministry of Education, Higher Education Council, and other training institutions. The values are professionalism, integrity, transparency, justice, sustainability, and reliability. It is an independent authority providing reports on the education and training in Bahrain. It was established in 2008 under a royal decree, and it is affiliated to the cabinet, to the Bahraini cabinet. Departments of the authority. There is a general department for review of training and education, public schools departments, private school departments, university colleges, training and publishing reports. Also the qualifications framework as placing and equalizing the qualifications. It may not be issued by the educational institutions, maybe training institutions. It will be placed and equalized according to certain scale. Our topic today is management of the national assessment. There are annual examinations or assessments according to their grade, and the human resources. The authority was established in 2008. In 2007, His Highness Prince Salman, the Crown Prince, he took the responsibility of education development and economy development. Since that time, the ministry has conducted an assessment study in cooperation with the UNESCO, having many volumes showing the improvement opportunities in the field of education. Accordingly, Bahrain University conducted a study. According to such studies, a set of bodies or entities, institutions such as the National Authority for Qualification and Bahrain College for Teachers, as well as other systems, the national assessments or examinations, they come under the framework of the national authority. The first assessment was in 2009. In 2008, there were many discussions on the national assessments, among the specialists or experts. The authority got the assistance of the International Examination Section in Cambridge University, and there was study between the Ministry of Education, and there was an agreement regarding the assessments. The first national assessment or examination was conducted for some grades according to the national curriculum and the international standards. This is for grades 3, 6, and 9. In 2009, first assessment was conducted for the 3rd and 6th grade because the education system is in cycles. The curriculum was put in the sufficiency cycles, 3rd and 6th, 1st and 2nd cycle, then 2010, the 3rd cycle or stage for 9th grade. In 2011, same grades, we started the examination for the 12th grade in 2012. Before conducting the assessment, we make a sample or some kind of probationary or experiment how to do the examination, because it needs great secrecy. Each year before conducting the examination, we make a try or some kind of experimental. In 2014 and 2015, on 12th March, there was the exam of the 12th grade, and on 8th of May, there will be an assessment for the 3rd primary class. This is a historical overview. The department has many objectives. The most important of them, evaluation of the performance of Bahrain Kingdom students independently, without the influence of the ministry. This will be done independently in 4 main languages: Arabic language, English language, mathematics and sciences, for grades 3, 6, and 9, and assessing progress extent, a process according to the national curriculum, evaluating performance of the 2nd class, 12th class in Arabic language and English language. But the last subject, after consulting with the Ministry of Education and academic specialists, many sessions were held. The labor market required students who can solve problems to use the scientific subjects in solving the problems and using them to in the labor situations. So the 3rd subject was problem solving in the 12th class, and providing information about the performance of the classes and participating in improving the education system in Bahrain, and developing in order to participate in improving the education system in line with the international standards. The examinations and buildings will be according to the mechanisms and approved specifications and corrections. The last point, which is important, which was greatly argued at the Ministry of Education in Bahrain, is publishing the results and reports publishing these things may cause a problem. Therefore, some of the objectives of the authority, though its values are transparent, the results should be after the examinations and assessments and implementing the results, schools reports, university reports, they will be presented to the board of directors of the authority. Then it will be submitted to the cabinet. Then the cabinet will approve. As soon as these are approved in the afternoon, after 2-3 hours, they will be published on the website of the authority. All the results of the schools, results of the students in the examinations. The website is available. Anybody can access and see the result. They can check the name of school, results of the students, and this is a very bold step at the beginning. Many authorities were unhappy, but now over the time we have been used and we have got the culture of publishing the reports and being no problem. Some private schools publish some important schools and famous schools, when they were told that their report was published, there some problems happened, but the authority is committed to achieve its objectives for the development of education. The targeted grades are 3, 6, and 9 in Arabic language, English language, mathematics, and sciences, except for the 3rd primary class. Before they were examined in both Arabic language and mathematics. That after a time, the coordination committee, upon the request of the specialists, in 2013, the English language was introduced for examination in the 3rd class. The 12th grade, they were examined in Arabic language, English language, and the problem solving. The national examinations were designed according to international standard, design of the paper, specifications of the assessment were according to the international criteria and standards, in association with the 12th class examinations were designed were designed in the United Kingdom for the Arabic language, and also as level IGSCS, the English language examinations against the level B of the European framework for the SVER languages. A cycle of producing the national assessments. It will be done under the supervision of many teachers, educators, ministry, and academy professors. This to promote the national capabilities and training them on how to prepare the examinations in a good level. We put the schedule of specifications. This is very important. Then there is a training course. This training course, hundreds of male and female teachers and specialists have been trained at the beginning of the examinations. At each examination session, we invested in the human capital, in training the human resources and involving them in cooperation with the international partner. But now the examinations are done by national citizens according to the specifications and criteria recognized internationally. Then assigning the examination establishing persons, putting the preparation of the examinations. Those people are assigned to establish or to put the examinations. There is some secrecy and there is a contract. There is acceptance or rejections in the examination paragraphs. Then we have a pre-test conducted for these paragraphs or items, and they will be tried on a sample of schools, and there will be statistics analysis to see the valid examinations. This is all during building or putting of examinations. Then we come to the actual exam, then examining the assessment. There are some specialists of the Ministry of Education or from the university. The exam paper will be given to the students, giving him to know the time, whether time is sufficient or not, and the level, before printing out and implementing the exam itself. Then the correction of exam papers. There will be a contract between some teachers according to a contract in a certain mechanism, according to the build table, issuance of the results. This is the cycle of producing the national assessment. It takes 2 years to check the accuracy. For the 12th class is the same process, except for the exam papers. Somebody will be assigned from among the university professors or of educators. Then the paper will be examined, then it will be implemented. The cycle will take 18 months for the 12th grade. The cycle of putting the items, examination items. This is a workshop for the teachers sent to the ministry. So we are given some teachers in public schools or sometimes private schools. These are trained on how to put the examination items. This is reflected when we speak about technical support of the teachers. When he is trained, he conveys his experience. When he goes back to school, the examination items will be according to the specifications. The items will be put according to a directory, guiding directory, and workshops will be held for teachers. There are hundreds of teachers in certain committees who correct the papers according to certain mechanisms in correcting the papers. Here I'd like to discuss one point. The most important point in examinations, there are three types of reports: quantity reports, consisting of students' results. This is a form of the certificate or the report. The quality or qualitative reports speaking on the competences, competence and the annual reports issued by the authority. There is one chapter for national assessment and for the review of performance of schools. Set of reports are published on our website, on the authority website. Anybody can see them. When we speak about the quantity reports, here the national examinations or national assessments provide the technical and professional support to the teachers. The grades or the scores are issued according to the percentage, average percentage of performance score. The reports, there are four types: students report, and teaching group report, school report, and Ministry of Education report. There are four reports issued by the examination department. The percentage or average is 70%. It was agreed upon since the beginning. The result of each student is compared with the result of another students, and the scores in this system come between 0 to 8. The national edge was 8%. The examinations should be, it will be at the same level. Here the students report, students performance report. Here in the grade, elementary grade, name of the school, results of the students, showing performance of the students to show whether his average, according to the national average, his parent, the parent is very important for grade 3 to know the performance of his son or daughter compared with the national average. Also, there is the student performance for grade 3, and then there is the teaching group report. The teacher may know the name of the student and the scores, the average of the teaching group, and the performance average, school performance average, and all schools performance average. Then there is a report regarding the school as a whole. They put the classes, the average performance, and compare the school with the governorate and with all the other schools. The school all cluster managers, they know the level of their schools compared with the performance of all the schools. This information are useful, and the importance of the school report show the the good schools are the ones that need some improvement and show the aspects that require some improvement. Before, there was the school performance for grades 3, 6, and 9. These reports support the technical support to diagnose, to show the strength point and the points that need improvement, the role of the school. When they put the strategic plan, they should raise the level of the students requiring improvement in mathematics, Arabic language, or any other language. Regarding the 12th grade, here the scope of scores will be A, B, C, D. This will be from A from 90 to 100, B from 80 to 89. Here is the report of the student sent to the student. The transcript. There is a memorandum of understanding with Bahrain University to take the results of these students. This is for admission of the students in the university. The report of the school is useful for the school, the principal of the school, and the teachers to know the level of achievement of students in the skills, reading skills, writing skills, Arabic language, also English language. This we can know how many people got A scores, B, etc. I spoke about the quantitative reports, speaking about the results of the students sent to the schools. What is important, I was at the Ministry of Education before. It was important. I was responsible for the curriculum. We wanted to know what are the competences mastered by the students, which are not. This gives us a feedback on how to intervene to raise the level of the curriculum. When at the correction time, we put a chief of correction. He will be experienced from all these chiefs of correction are taken from schools. Somebody, experienced person, will be chosen as the chief or head of corrections. We give them the scale or the report and summary report. Each paper, each examination paper has the report of the chief of correction. In case 3 papers, detailed papers, and the last report speaks briefly on the performance of this paper. The reports are published on the website of the authority, and anybody can access, and after being approved by the cabinet, and then they will be published and sent to the Ministry of Education or to the schools. The schools' reports will be sent to the school directly. Ministry reports will be sent also to the ministry. Content of the correction chief's reports Each report will include the competencies and commenting on the performance of the students and the strength points and the weakness points requiring improvement. This is a form of the correction chief report. This is in Arabic language. Is speaking in detail on the performance of the students. I'd like to say here, when we speak about the national examinations in our method for preparation, implementation of the examinations, and issuing the results, the workshops will be held for analyzing the results of the examinations 1 month before. Workshop was done for the 12th grade examinations analysis, examination results analysis. The principal of the school will see the results of the students through the process of the outcoming results. We see the strength points and the weakness points. This will help the school in supporting the technical support to school, and through the training done by the workshop or the cycle, production cycle. In each cycle, in each part of the cycle, workshops will be conducted for the teachers on how to prepare the examinations, how to analyze them, how to benefit from the results. Then the teacher can benefit in improving preparation of the examinations, classroom preparations or school exams. In addition to, as mentioned by Dr. Taysir, the examinations, there is another authority responsible for reviewing the performance of schools. Reports will be prepared on the school leadership, on the activities, on the curriculum, on the safety of the students at school. The report also includes the results of the examination, and a report will be written about the school. It is not technical and qualitative reports. It's also school performance reports in order to improve the quality of the education at school. I think here I have finished my presentation, and I am ready to answer any question in this regard. We thank Shaika Lulwa for presenting the experience of Bahrain in the national examinations, national assessment. We'll receive the questions in this regard. I can't hear the speaker. Please use the mic. Thank you for this good and interesting presentation. We can benefit from it. My question to Her Highness Shaika, to what extent is the Bahraini student serious in performing the examination? You said that we like to make the university take the results of the 12th grade in consideration. To what extent the Bahraini student is serious in taking the examinations? Thank you for this question. This is very important question. The seriousness of the students in 2008, when the authority conducted the examinations, held a meeting at the Ministry of Education on the results of the examinations. The requirement was that the results of the examination will be considered as a performance or indicator of the performance of the student. The examinations are according to international standards, so we delayed such examinations till the students become used to that. The first year, the interest of the students was better at the first year, and the results were better. But when the examinations are not important for his promotion, or upon discussion with the Ministry of Education, and recently the ministry has approved to calculate some scores of the students during the year in his final result. This percentage may increase the interest and seriousness of the students. The motive is a problem. Motivation is a problem, especially when the examinations are not considered in their final result or grade. When we hold workshops with the teachers, they are benefited. Especially for the English language, we have found out that the results have been improving, because the teachers said we have benefited from preparation of these questions and items. The idea is that you want to develop, then you need a time to convince the teachers. The teachers, when they do their duty, they should be convinced. The process needs patience. Development needs patience, sustainability, and persistence. You persist on developing something, and the other party should be convinced. The forums for the examinations were held with parents. The parents are very important. Even the media campaigns with the parents, national campaigns, were useful for the student. It's not a problem of calculating the scores and marks. The students, they like to know their marks or to attain marks. This depends on the awareness or culture of the parents or the ministry officials in the education as a whole, of the importance of such examinations and reports regarding the performance of the students. I wanted to ask that during the presentation we have known the role of the authority in the preparation of the examination, then its role in the after the examinations and the results. What is the role of the authority during the examinations? The authority, the school guide on how to implement the national examinations or assessments. Before preparation of the assessments, it explains to schools how to prepare the examination or assessment, how to conduct, send some professionals or specialists on how to conduct the examinations. There are certain laws and regulations to supervise the examinations. All aspects should be identified during the examination. The authority makes tours, inspection tours, and there is a dividing line. And there is communication with schools. Any school having any problem, it will communicate the authority and get a reply to their inquiry and question, or there is a follow-up by the authority before the exam, during the exam, and after the exam. All the questions will be replied. Thanks to Shaika Lulwa Khalifa for her presentation and her detailed explanations. Thank you very much.
بنكرم الشيخة لولو حاليا لأن هي مستعجلة وراها طيارة فبتطلع
We would give the honorary participation for Sheikh Lula because she has to leave now for her flight. She has to catch a flight.
لا العفو الله يسلمك هذه كرم لي الله يسلمك ما قصرت والله يوفقك ان شاء الله جزاك الله خير
وما قصرتي واستفادوا الاخوان والاخوات من تجربتكم على الاقل
وليد التجربه
لا اكيد تحتاج الى وقت
ترسح
نعم
ما شاء الله جزاك الله خير وين مصور تمام ولا نصير هناك مصطفى؟ ها؟
طيب
شكرا جزاك الله خير مشكورة العفو العفو جزاك الله خير مشكورة الله يسلمك
Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to our third paper about the development, the vocational development of teachers and the connection, its connection to the test results. And this would be presented by the researcher in education, Professor Ernest Spencer, who worked as from 1974 to 1948 as a senior teacher of English language and the Trinity schools. Sorry, there's a voice issue. He's a senior researcher and the Committee of Scottish Educational Research, and also he participated in the IEA studies in the early 80s. He worked as a educational inspector for Her Majesty, sorry, and then as specialist in evaluating the English from 85 to 96. And then a member and later a president of the English language committee, projects committee. And from 2002, after retirement till now, he's working as a consultant in many research projects as well as teaching in Glasgow University. He has many written papers, as in Edinburgh in 1979, and also in evaluating the English language of what is required, and which was presented in Paris in OECD 2005. Please welcome Professor Ernest to present his paper.
Thank you. Which one? RCH? This one? Or national assessment?
No, it's not that one.
Not that one?
It should say receipt.
Which one? Receipt?
It might be that. That's it. Good morning, everybody. I see that it is still morning. For 2 minutes, it's still morning. I am very honored to be here, to have been invited by the Regional Centre for Educational Planning to come and talk to you. And my colleague, Professor Louise Hayward, whom I am replacing because she was the original person who was invited, joins me in thanking RCEP for the invitation and in expressing our good wishes from Glasgow to all the education systems that RCEP serves. Now, when you analyze national test results or international test results, you will probably find that there are certain areas of the curriculum that need special attention. Or maybe you might find there are particular groups of students who need special attention. But the essential point of the presentation that I'm going to make on my own behalf and on my colleague Louise Hayward's behalf is that the nature of the pedagogy, the nature of the learning and teaching that you need to make happen to improve in a particular curricular area or for a particular group of pupils is essentially the same. It's generic to effective learning and teaching across the board for all pupils, for all children. And the idea of assessment for learning is intrinsic to it. Now, I want to begin with a cautionary tale about testing. In Scotland, we used to have a national testing system which we brought into play around about 1990. And it lasted until about 2005, 2006. And during that time, there was a reading test which all children in Scotland took at different age groups, age 8, aged 11, age 14. And during all that time, the teachers, the local authorities who were responsible for the schools, and the Scottish Government accepted the results of that test as giving them valuable and clear information about the quality of reading among Scottish children. It was only around about 2004 that my colleague Louise and I analyzed the nature of the questions in the test. And we discovered that in most tests, it was possible to score 80 or 90% of the marks by answering questions which were very simple, which were literal questions, where you could find the answer simply in the text that you'd been asked to read. And there were very, very few questions which involved making an inference or making an evaluative response to the text. So for 15 years in Scotland, and we thought we were good at this. We have a reputation for being good at assessment and being good at national testing. But for 15 years, we were using evidence which was actually very weak. It wasn't telling us anything about important aspects of the process of reading. So this sentence, which is on the slide at the moment, is very important. If you're using a national testing system or an international testing system to inform what happens in your policies or in your classrooms, make sure you're testing what matters. Now, if we address the question, what does matter? It's interesting to ask the question, assessment for learning what? What kinds of learning are we hoping to use assessment to promote? Now, I want to begin here by inviting you to think about three very broad ways in which the curriculum of a school or a country can be thought about. The first way, a very traditional way, is that the curriculum is there in order to initiate young people into knowledge, into ways of thinking, into social ways of living, and skills which are inherently valuable. It's self-evident that they're valuable, or they're useful for future employment. And when you have this kind of idea about the curriculum, concepts such as logic and order and cognitive development and knowing that something is the case, these kinds of concepts are important. But then there's a second conception of the curriculum which involves the idea that what it's mainly about is enabling young people to become thinkers, to become reflective, to be able to hypothesize, to solve problems, and to understand personally in the context of the broad culture of your country, your society. So knowledge in this idea of curriculum is purposeful, and active engagement and curiosity and intuition and imagination are important, as well as logical thought. Then the third broad definition of it is what we've come to call becoming a person. It's something bigger than just learning to be reflective. It continues lifelong, and it's not confined to young people's experiences in schools or colleges. It includes all their experiences of the society in which they live, and it involves the idea of becoming the kind of person that you want to be. This is a set of ideas which go back originally to the American therapist Carl Rogers, who wrote about them in the 1950s and 60s. Now, our view is that the nature of the teaching that goes on should be colored, should be determined by the fact that the third of those definitions of curriculum is the one we should follow. That what we're about is developing reflectiveness and self-determination, intellectual self-determination, and social and emotional self-determination, and confidence, and the idea that the teacher is not just conveying subject matter to the learners, but is also a kind of counselor who helps the students to perceive what they can do and what they can be. And our view is that for this to happen, you need kinds of teaching which provide three things, which we've summarized under these three headings: intellectual sustenance and challenge, and thinking skills, and collaborative learning, collaborative working. And what we mean by the intellectual sustenance idea is that every learner, every student, needs to be presented with significant ideas and interact with them, engage with them. Real intellectual challenges which matter in each subject area that they're studying. And another key element in this concept of intellectual sustenance and challenge is that the expectation should be consistently high for all young people to understand and think about them. So nobody should be involved in undertaking classroom activities which are essentially trivial. And if you look in many textbooks, there are quite a lot of trivial activities. And these ideas that people need to engage with, they will come from many sources. They'll come from the internet, they'll come from books and journalism and other media, and from teachers. But they're for analysis and critique. They are for comparison and incorporation in each student's own fashion in her or his own set of values and constructs. The second big concept that we think needs to be there in our understanding of what kind of learning and teaching works is that thinking has to go on. A long time ago, when I worked at the Scottish Council for Research in Education in Edinburgh, I had a colleague, a brilliant young teacher who had become a researcher for a short while, and he had only one criterion for the quality of teaching. His only criterion was, does it make them think? And it's maybe worth keeping that in mind. So the view that we're arguing is that the effective teaching, what will lead to successful performance, creates a kind of excitement of mind in the learner, so that the learner wants to get a grip, wants to understand, wants to work things out, wants to find out more, wants to experience more, wants to try to solve problems. And this desire comes from the nature of the ideas and the tasks which are presented, and from the teacher's expectation of independent thought. And there are two types of this thinking. One is the understanding of new ideas and information in your own language and in relation to what you already know. And the second is the application of doubt, the questioning of things, the questioning of assumptions and assertions, other people's, and also your own. So the implication of that is that requiring young people in their different subject areas to write or to talk are valuable means of stimulating thinking for understanding. The kind of thinking you have to do in order to prepare a piece of writing, or to prepare an ordered talk, or to prepare a presentation in other media, in art or drama or music, or to make a video or a website. That kind of thinking, production of an ordered statement, requires hard thinking about the topic, about the subject matter, and also skill in and thinking about the way of doing it, which might be language or might be some other medium. And then finally, in answer to the question which is at the head of all these slides, why should assessment for learning work? This third big element, after intellectual sustenance and challenge and thinking, the third big element is collaborative work. And we know what the theoretical background to this is. We know from Vygotsky and many other theoreticians that we learn ideas first socially and then we internalize them individually. And we know that the key means of doing both of these things, learning things and internalize them, is talking to other people. Dialogue is central. So the last point on this slide is important. Independent learning, the development, really effective independent learning, which will lead to many young people achieving high scores in tests and examinations, is not a matter of solely individual learning. It happens through effective learning along with others, with the teacher and with other students. So, assessment for learning, the kind which will improve examination and test performance, has essentially got three recurring activities which keep coming back and happening again and again if you do it right. It involves stimulating the learners to think about whatever subject they are working with. It involves finding out what they're thinking and how they're thinking, and that is mainly done through dialogue, through talking. And it involves identifying with the learner the next steps, the new challenges they can face now for more effective thinking and fuller and more definite grasp of what's being learned. So it's assessment not just for learning but for development. These ideas come from the work of Paul Black and Dylan William, the UK researchers, who note that Vygotsky's idea of the zone of proximal development is not just what a student can do with support, which might just mean learning something and being able to repeat it or to recite it, but it's a description of a maturing psychological function, the ability to learn independently. And the key argument that Black and William make is that assessment for learning contributes very significantly to psychological development, to making the learner a more capable learner and a more capable performer in every way, because the quality of interactive feedback and reflection are critical features in a learning activity. An assessment for learning develops the orientations and the abilities and the confidence which are characteristic of the independent learner, the collaborative learner, the person who is in the process of becoming a person. Now, all of that, all I've been saying up to now is in a sense theoretical. It's what are the theoretical reasons why this kind of approach to teaching and to assessment in the classroom should be successful. But the question is it successful? Do we know that it works? Actually, we do, to a fair extent. Black and William, long ago in the 1990s, reviewed over 250 studies linking assessment of that kind and learning, and their publication produces a clear and incontrovertible message that initiatives to enhance the effectiveness of assessment to promote learning in the classroom can and does raise pupil achievement as measured by tests. The scale of the effect, they said, would be the equivalent of between 1 and 2 grades at the English General Certificate of Secondary Education, GCSE, for an individual. And for England as a whole, the estimated performance in the Mathematics International Programme, TIMSS, would move England up from the middle of 41 countries to the top 5 if this kind of assessment activity was consistently going on in classrooms. And they also demonstrated that the gain in performance is more likely to be even more substantial for lower achieving learners. Now, Black and William also spell out in a more recent publication the steps that are essential to make it happen, how to do it. These are well-known things in effective teaching, but I take the opportunity of repeating them. You need to clarify and share learning intentions and criteria for success that move learners forward. You need to create classroom discussions and other learning tasks which produce evidence of understanding. So again, there's an emphasis on talk, dialogue, as the means of getting the evidence. You need to provide feedback that moves the learners forward, and you need to activate students as learning resources for one another, and activate them as owners of their own learning, which will happen if they become learning resources for one another. So to make this approach work, the teacher needs a very clear understanding of the curriculum and what matters in it, and a very clear understanding of what progression means, where you go step by step through the program of study. And the teacher needs to recognize that the assessment approaches you use, whether you use this flexible, collaborative assessment for learning approach, or whether you use only a testing and examination approach, has a powerful influence on the motivation and self-esteem of learners, both of which are crucial influences on learning. The teacher also needs to recognize that every student can improve and needs to adjust teaching to take account of the results of the assessments. And the feedback, which is so central to this approach, needs to, first of all, to be frequent. Now, just fairly recently, about 3 years ago in Scotland, we conducted a study called, it's here called AAT. It stands for Assessment at Transition. And it was a project that the Scottish Government asked us in Glasgow University to do, to look at assessment in the new curriculum that's being implemented in Scotland at the end of the primary school and at the beginning of the secondary school. Now, as part of that study, we talked to pupils about what they regarded as good about the assessment they were currently experiencing, and also what was missing, what did they want to be happening, which wasn't happening. On the what was good question, we got a vast range of different views from the learners, from the young people. They didn't have very clear ideas about what they thought was good that was happening to them. However, there was a common message from all of them across all the schools we talked to and all the local authorities about what they wanted, which wasn't happening. And what they wanted was to have more one-to-one conversation with their teacher. So they wanted frequent feedback about how effectively they were learning. The feedback, and Black and William have demonstrated this numerous times in several publications, needs to be, in order to help learning, it needs to be comments rather than grades. Although, of course, young people like grades, and so do their parents. But the benefits for learning come from the comments. Identification of strengths and development needs and next steps. And the feedback needs to offer a view of what pupils should be aiming for. and provide them with skills and strategies for taking the next steps in their learning. The last point on this slide simply summarizes an approach which I've been using for a very long time now, because I started teaching a very long time ago, somewhere about 1967. And when I was an English teacher long ago, I used to use this three-stage system for feedback. This is what you've done very well. This is the success. This is what you've attempted to do, but not quite brought off. And that's the growth point, because the learner has shown that he's tried to do something there, but hasn't quite succeeded in doing it. The third point might not have come into play at all if the growth point was clear enough. But then you might also think, well, this learner doesn't know something that he needs to be taught, and then you need to teach it to him. But these three, this tripartite approach to feedback, I found over many years work quite successfully. So you've seen this slide before, but I put it up a second time deliberately. The process is very simple, but needs to be consistent. Stimulate thinking, find out what and how they're thinking through dialogue, identify with them next steps for new challenges, more effective thinking, fuller, more certain grasp of what's being learned. And if these things happen, my colleague, Professor Hayward, is now arguing that in the phrase assessment for learning, we should remove the preposition, and we should be arguing assessment, this kind of assessment, is learning. So, to make this kind of assessment happen, it's necessary to conceive of these four aspects of what's going on: the curriculum, the program of study, what the teacher does, what the learners do, and the process of assessment, as one continuous and integrated and cyclical process. Now, what does it look like when it's actually happening? I've brought a small number of examples to give you a sense of it. The first set of ideas come from a project that actually my colleagues and I in Glasgow are still involved in. We haven't quite finished working with the local authority in Scotland. It's the authority called East Lothian in the Edinburgh area. And they asked us to go and look at a method they were using to teach early number awareness, early arithmetic, to young children in primary schools. So the pupils, the learners that we talked to were aged 6 and 8. And we found when we came to talk to these children that as a result of using the approach that the authority was using, it's called number counts, by the way, they became quite adept at explaining their thinking when they were addressing arithmetical problems. They couldn't all do it equally well, but even those who were less capable at the arithmetic problems than others, nevertheless had developed an understanding that how they were thinking was important and they needed to explain it. There was no single magic bullet which made the success of this program happen, but the characteristics of it which seemed to be contributing to its success were that, first of all, there was a planning framework which all the teachers were familiar with and indeed had contributed to. So they knew what the progression was. When the children had a grasp of that, this was what they moved on to next, and so on. And an important idea was what long ago the American researcher John Carroll called time on task. there was a time commitment. Every day, there was a significant amount of time given to this program of developing number awareness and approaches to arithmetic. And the other key element was that the teachers were learning professionally as they did it, and learning from one another, interacting with one another, and discussing how it was being done and what was working and what wasn't. So those are key characteristics of this first study that, oh, sorry. The second one I want to say something about is one that I undertook some years ago now as part of the OECD study of assessment for learning, formative assessment in secondary schools. And in the course of that, in one Scottish school, I observed a history teacher, and he was working with pupils who were aged 12, 13. Now, history, I should tell you, in most Scottish secondary schools, is not a highly popular subject. Children tend to get bored by it. They're not very interested in it. And you might say they should be, but in many schools, it's not a shining light for the students arriving at school every day. They're not looking forward to going to history. But in this school, the work featured self and peer evaluation of group presentations on research topics. The research activities used carefully identified library and internet resources, and the preparation for presentation constituted about 50% of what they did in class. The other 50% of the time, the teacher was teaching them something and guiding them, but more than 50% or more of the time was group activity in which the young people were doing the research. And the staff justified this approach on the grounds that the process of learning was as valuable as the subject content, and the practical application of history skills in the research presentations deepened young people's understanding of the ideas and evidence, and developed not only interest in history, but also personal confidence and collaborative skills in working with other children. The research topics that the teacher chose were deliberately controversial. So, for instance, one of them was the Romans, who invaded Britain long ago, didn't really create a civilized society in Britain. What is the evidence for and against this statement? Or another one was William Wallace, who was a famous Scottish hero who fought against the English, deserved to be executed by the English. How far do you agree? And each group was expected to include in the presentation an introduction, background information, and an argument for and against the proposition. But there was much more to it than just this presentation. They also agreed in the whole class what would be the characteristics of a high-quality presentation, and of a less high-quality one, and of a rather poor one. So when each group made their presentation, they were being judged by the other members of the class. And that was quite a motivating thing. They wanted to make sure they did it well. And the teacher had deliberately chosen the groups so that they were mixed ability. They were not all bright pupils in one group and not all less bright pupils in one group. Each group had a mix of pupils. And the result of that was that because everybody had to contribute, everybody had to do some of the research, everybody had to do some of the presentation, the brighter pupils made sure that their pupils who needed more support got support from them. It was highly collaborative. And it worked. the pupils' presentations were very successful. As a result of using this approach, they wrote better about history, and they also voted with their feet. Many of them went on to do higher history when they got to the end of their secondary school. Now, the really interesting thing about this story is that most Scottish teachers, and I suspect this applies all over the world, most Scottish teachers would tend to say, that's really interesting, learning and teaching, but we can't do it because we have to prepare the pupils for the examination. The guy who was doing this, the teacher who was doing it, was the principal examiner for history in the Scottish Qualifications Authority. He was setting the examinations which the pupils were later going to sit, and he was not taking the view that in order to pass them very successfully, they needed to be coached and given lots and lots of examination practice. His view was that they needed to do this collaborative kind of learning. Okay, how am I doing for time? Yes, Okay, the third example of this kind of activity in practice that I'd like to draw to your attention. We gathered in a project that we did 4 or 5 years ago for one of the Scottish local authorities, the one called Highland Council. And there we went to work with secondary schools at the stage when the pupils were doing the external examinations at the end of secondary school. So they do examinations in Scotland at age 16 and then again at age 17, 18. The 17, 18 ones are the high stakes ones, the university entrance ones. They're called hires in Scotland. Now, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, which organizes these examinations, provides publicly the criteria of success. It's a they're criterion referenced examinations. They're not just norm referenced. So the teachers and the pupils have access to the criteria for an A award, a B award, a C award. And these teachers in Highland region were using these published criteria as means of helping the children to learn more effectively as they approached the examination. So some examples of what they were doing are these. They got the pupils to think out collaboratively in groups how they would approach particular examination mathematics questions, calling on maths knowledge covered in the course, working out the nature of the problem in question, and using the published grade-related criteria to identify key requirements of the answer if it is to achieve a high grade. Or they engaged the pupils in what they called jigsaw cooperative learning, in which a group would ensure that they had a full grasp of a particular topic that they were learning, and another group had a full grasp of another topic, and another group had a full grasp of another topic, and then they taught one another. Or they got, in an English classroom, they operated what the teacher called a reading market, in which pupils made themselves very capable of answering certain kinds of question which would come up in the examination, and other pupils would move around the room and come and talk to them about how to address that question. They also, for example, in modern languages, had pupils producing their own marking schemes for summative assessment tasks, for essays in French or German. And they used brainstorming approaches and the examiner's published marking scheme to mark essays written by students in previous years, which the teacher had kept for this purpose. So these approaches were not approaches long before the examination period. They were being used immediately before the examination period and led to, according to the teachers, better success for that group of pupils than typically pupils had been getting in previous years. Okay, I'll skip the last example because I'll need to move on to finish the slides. Now, two questions which arise about the kind of assessment for learning approaches I've been advocating are, can you do it in mixed ability classes? Can you do it when you've got a mix of high achieving and less well achieving pupils? So I want to tell you a story from my days as an inspector of Scottish education. I inspected a primary school once, and in Scotland we have very many small primary schools, very scattered over rural areas. So this was a school with only 2 teachers. One teacher took the youngest group, youngest 2 years, primary 1 and primary 2, ages 5 and 6. And the other teacher took all the rest. So she had pupils aged 6 or 7 to 10, 11 in the same class. And that class, the 6 or 7 to 10, 11 class, they produced over about 2 years a whole range of highly effective poetry, which they had written themselves. And later, when we published, the inspectors published guidance on writing, improving writing across the Scottish curriculum, I took these poems round the country and read them out to teachers and invited them to say how old the pupils were who had written them. And they couldn't distinguish very often between the poems which had been written by 6 and 7-year-olds and those that had been written by 10 and 11-year-olds. And the reason was that the teacher, in setting the tasks and in giving them the experience of going out to the nearby lake and observing and paying attention to what was happening in nature, she didn't differentiate that according to the age of the pupils. They all had the same experience. And that seemed to me to be an important lesson in terms of what counts as challenge. The second story relates to the question, can this approach work in high-stakes contexts? Well, I just gave you some examples from Highland Council of schools using it in high-stakes contexts. But this particular story is of interest too. One of the last schools I inspected before I retired from the inspection organization was a private school in Glasgow, highly successful, and where the parents of the students are paying large amounts of money to get the education. Okay, I'm very near the end. In this school, the general level of performance across the examinations was high. But there was one department whose performance far excelled the others. It was the English department. And I inspected that department. And one of the things I discovered was that they did not give their students any kind of examination until about 2 months before the final examination, when they were 17 years old. So they used the assessment for learning approach throughout, and their success was higher than all the other departments. Okay, 2 last points, not about the nature of the learning and teaching, but about the kind of leadership you need to make it happen. There are many things you can say about leadership, and this is a very selective set of points. But the critical requirement is that leaders have to focus on learning and teaching and meeting needs. And in a project that was very successful in Scotland, where the assessment for learning approach I've been advocating was successfully developed, In following it up afterwards, we discovered that there were 3 key requirements which made it work, which the teachers told us made it work. The first is what we called educational integrity, and that meant that the teachers who were involved in doing it recognized that this was good. They recognized that this was a matter of importance to education. The second thing was what we call personal and professional integrity, and that meant that the teachers had not been given something to go and implement which was not their own. They were given something and asked to think about it and work with it and make it their own. And their views were taken into account in the implementation process about how it should work and how it wasn't working in some cases. And the third and last element was what we call systemic integrity. It worked because every bit of the system, the government policymakers, the local authority implementers, the head teachers in the schools, and the inspectors who were coming to look at what was going on, were all committed to making this work. And if any of them had not been, it wouldn't have worked effectively. So it was a complex kind of implementation, but its complexity was actually desirable. Trying to do a simplified, manageable way where you do a pilot and then you roll it out by telling everybody else to do it, just telling them to do it, not helping them to do it, that isn't effective. The things that matter in the process of change, in making that kind of learning and teaching happen, are important for all participants in every phase of the development. It's just as important that teachers who come in after 2 or 3 years into a program get the same kind of help and support as those who started at the beginning. I've gone on too long, sorry. Are people going to ask questions in Arabic?
نشكر
We thank Professor Spencer for his detailed presentation and giving some stories and examples to explain it. He started with a sentence and attracted the attention of everybody that be sure to assess what the students have learned. The assessment should not be far from what they are learning. The teacher should choose certain items they learned and should assess them according to the knowledge and the skills he has taught them. The topic of this paper is how national assessments play a great role in the professional development of the teacher, and the teachers are subject to training courses, last year for 40 hours, this year for 80 hours. If I need to upgrade the efficiency of the teachers, I have to train them. True, there is some reaction by the teachers, or some teachers explain that there are some points to develop the training. The ministry has been going ahead in training. The results of the national assessments and international assessments have been translated into kits to teachers. When we speak about mathematics, we see the results of assessments. We have found out that pupils are weak in geometry and algebra. When we go back to curriculum, we find that our books have information and they contain new outcomes and national criteria. The geometry was boosted by workshops on geometry, also workshops on potentials and workshops on interpreting of data. The ministry is translating these things into workshops in order to support the teachers and learning. Is there any question to the professor? Regarding the questions, how can the ministry regarding the results regarding schools as a school principal or a teacher, how can we put our plans based on analysis of these results? How can we use them in planning? How use the analysis?
Well, to an extent, that's a question for the ministry here. But our view would be that we need to make teachers capable of doing the kind of learning and teaching that I was describing. And the kind of packages which you're describing, which are developed after the analysis of results on various, that's a very helpful start, but it's not all that's needed. It's one thing to bring teachers together in a seminar and a workshop to discuss how to teach this package, but it's important also to create a culture in each school where teachers talk to one another about how to do it and network as a team.
The professor says that part of the question is the point which we have spoken before, that we translated the results into a training policy. Translating it into training policy as training kits is one party. The other party should also work. This is the Ministry of Education is trying to have a teaching and learning environment, and they discussing the curriculum together in order to implement the curriculum in the best manner. Any other question? Thank you very much for your kind attendance, and to the management of the center, Regional Center for Educational Planning, for inviting us. Thank you for your attending. We thank Mr. Ernest. Thank you, Hawla.